Armada, Michigan, a speck on the map. Population, less than 2,000. Here, neighbors wave to each other from their porches. Children walk to school without a second thought, and the loudest sound on a summer night is the rustle of leaves in the breeze. It's the kind of place people move to when they want to escape the chaos of the outside world. A place where for decades the idea of violent crime was something you read about in newspapers, something that happened somewhere else. But on a warm July evening in 2014, that sense of safety shattered. One text message, just 6 words, would send an entire community spiraling into fear and grief. This is the story of April Millsap, her life, her last walk, and the investigation that brought a killer to justice. April Millsap was 14 years old. The only child of Jennifer and Bobby Millsap, she lived with her mother in Armada, a rural township surrounded by farmland, orchards, and winding country roads. Those who knew April remember her as bright, independent, and compassionate. She loved animals, especially her dog Penny, a black mixed breed who followed her everywhere. April dreamed of becoming a veterinarian one day, a dream that seemed perfectly in line with her gentle, caring nature. Though her parents had separated when she was younger, April maintained close relationships with both, as well as her step-parents. Family dinners, shared outings, and laughter-filled weekends were common. She also had a boyfriend, Austin, whom she'd been dating for about a year. By teenage standards, it was a serious relationship. They went to the same school, shared inside jokes, and texted throughout the day. Armada itself was, in many ways, frozen in time. Neighbors looked out for each other. People left their doors unlocked. The police department consisted of only a handful of officers, and major crimes were rare. And because nothing bad ever seemed to happen, no one imagined how quickly that could change. July 24, 2014. School was out, the sky was clear, and the air held that thick, lazy stillness unique to Michigan evenings. At around 6 p.m., April decided to take Penny for a walk. It was part of her regular routine. She often walked the nearby Macomb Orchard Trail, a paved path cutting through town, lined with trees and shrubs. The route usually took her about an hour. Her mom, Jennifer, watched her leave. There was nothing unusual. No strange cars on the street. No unfamiliar faces. Just April, in shorts and sneakers, with Penny trotting happily beside her. An hour passed, then an hour and a half. Jennifer began to glance at the clock more often. By the 2-hour mark, worry began to take root. She called April's friends. No one had seen her. He hadn't either. Then Austin looked at his phone. There it was, a message from April, time-stamped 6:30 p.m. "I think I almost got kidnapped." She dialed her husband, David, and then the police. Within minutes, April Millsap was officially a missing person. While Jennifer and Austin searched the neighborhood, another couple, a man and a woman, were jogging along the orchard trail. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the path. That's when they heard it, the sound of a dog barking in the distance. It was urgent, frantic. They followed the sound and found a black dog, leash still attached, pacing and agitated. The woman knelt, reaching out a hand, but the dog darted toward a thick patch of brush. It was as if the animal wanted them to follow. They pushed through the undergrowth, and there, in a small ravine, lay the body of a teenage girl. Her skin pale, her hair tangled, her clothing disheveled. The man pulled out his phone and dialed 911. His voice shook as he relayed what they'd found. Within minutes, the quiet trail was lit with flashing red and blue. The body was quickly identified as April Millsap. She was barefoot. Her clothes were rumpled. Investigators noted clear signs of a struggle, bruises, abrasions, and a series of unusual impressions on her face and neck. Those marks, upon closer examination, were identified as shoe prints. Someone had stomped on her with enough force to leave patterned impressions in her skin. The autopsy would later reveal that April had suffered 48 distinct injuries. The attack had been prolonged, violent, and deeply personal, yet there was no evidence of sexual assault. Whatever the attacker's intentions had been, April had fought back, and in the end, he had taken her life anyway. In homicide investigations, the closest people to the victim are often questioned first. That meant Austin. Police found a potential motive in a recent argument the couple had had, and the fact that he'd been the one to receive the ominous text. But Austin had an airtight alibi. He'd been helping a friend, then stopped at a McDonald's, both confirmed by witnesses and security footage. The delay in his response to April's message also made sense. Cell service in Armada was notoriously spotty. Austin hadn't actually received the text until long after April had sent it. With Austin cleared, detectives were back to square one. Then came the first major break. April's phone was found about a kilometer from the crime scene. Inside was a fitness tracking app. It logged walking speed, heart rate, and distance. The data painted a chilling picture. At 6:30 p.m., April's speed spiked, likely as she ran from someone. 10 minutes later, movement stopped entirely. Then suddenly, the speed shot up again, far beyond human capability. The only explanation, her phone was moving by vehicle. The trail where she'd been walking was too narrow for a car. Investigators concluded the attacker must have been on a motorcycle. Reports began to filter in. Multiple witnesses had seen April that evening walking beside a man, middle-aged, wearing casual clothes, pushing a blue and white motorcycle along the path. April hadn't looked distressed at the time, which suggested the man may have initially approached her in a non-threatening way. 3 days after the murder, police located that motorcycle parked outside a home. It belonged to a man named James Van Callis, age 32. Van Callis had a record, mostly property crimes, but his father was a registered sex offender. The family connection raised eyebrows, but it was James Jr. who matched witness descriptions. When questioned, Van Callis claimed he'd been with a friend that evening, but the alibi was shaky. Then his ex-girlfriend came forward. She told police that the night of the murder, James had been cleaning his motorcycle, helmet, and a pair of black and white sneakers with hand sanitizer. She never saw the sneakers again. Social media photos soon surfaced showing Van Callis wearing those same sneakers in the past. Though the original shoes were gone, investigators obtained an identical pair from the same manufacturer. The tread pattern matched the impressions found on April's body. Cell phone records placed Van Callis on the trail at the time of the murder. Surveillance footage captured his motorcycle speeding away from the area shortly afterward. He had no DNA on the victim, but the circumstantial evidence was mounting. In October 2014, James Van Callis was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and assault with intent to commit sexual abuse. The prosecution argued that he had targeted April, approached her under false pretenses, and attacked her when she resisted. The brutality of the assault, they said, spoke to rage and frustration at a failed attempt to carry out his intended crime. The defense insisted he was being framed, pointing to the lack of physical evidence tying him directly to the scene. After deliberation, the jury returned a verdict, guilty on all counts. Van Callis was sentenced to life in prison without parole. April's funeral was held on August 1, 2014. The town turned out in force. Pink ribbons, her favorite color, adorned trees, fences, and streetlights. Penny, the loyal dog who had stayed by April until the very end, was recognized by many as the reason April's body was found so quickly. Without her, the trail to her killer might have gone cold. For April Millsap, life would never be the same. Her daughter's absence is a wound that time cannot heal. But in Armada, April's memory endures. In the pink ribbons, in the stories told about her kindness, and in the knowledge that her killer will never hurt another girl again. In small towns, danger often feels far away, but evil doesn't need a reason or a city to hide in. Sometimes it can be waiting on a familiar trail, on a quiet summer evening, just steps from home.